Hello and welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast, and I am your host, Samuel. In this podcast, I interview top medical sales reps and leading medical sales executives across the entire country. And it doesn't matter what medical sales industry, from medical device to pharmaceutical to genetic testing to diagnostic lab, you name it. You will learn how to either break into the industry, be a top 5% performer within your role in sales, or climb the corporate ladder. Welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Samuel. And today we have with us another special guest, and she goes by the name of Ellis Hatchett. Now, Ellis Hatchett is a senior Aquablation sales representative for Procept Biorobotics. So some of you have just heard me say this and you're thinking to yourselves, what in the world is that? But you heard Aquablation and you heard Biorobotics, so I know you're intrigued. And you better be, because this episode is exciting. You know, so many people are curious about robotics and what's actually happening. And here's an episode where you get to learn all about it. But I am not going to spill a single thing. If you want to know what we're talking about and you want to hear Ellis Hatchett do her thing, then you're going to have to listen to the interview. As always, we do our best to bring you guests that are doing things differently in the medical sales space, and I really do hope you enjoy this interview. Hey, Ellis, how are we doing today?
Wonderful. How are you?
No complaints. Why don't you tell us who you are and what you do?
Yeah, my name is Ellis. I'm a senior Aquablation Sales Rep for Procept Biorobotics.
Wow, biorobotics. You know, when people hear robotics, it's such a sexy term that everybody gets excited and thinks they want to be in it. But I love to have you on the show today because you're going to give us the truth about what is robotics. So everybody, it might still be sexy, but at least they'll have the reality of what they'll be getting into if they decide to pursue that career track. So let's break it down. What exactly is robotics?
Well, it's a term that I think has a ton of layers to it, depending on what your robot is accomplishing. But I think in the grand scheme of things, robotics is really meant to simplify a complicated task by taking out, the human element, which can create some intricacies, some not so great intricacies, right? So it's mainly supposed to level set the playing field when it comes to outcomes.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about, so right now, do you sell one robot? Do you have a whole plethora of robots? How does it work?
Yeah, Procept Biorobotics just has one robot. So I am a one-trick pony at this point.
And with this robot, you just said that it comes with its nuances. Give us a little bit of the experience with this robot. Like, what is it like to sell a robot?
Sure.
How are our providers, they can't wait, or are they just kind of addicted? What's the scene?
Sure. So robotics has this really interesting aura about it. You're not only selling a mechanical piece, right? Like there's a structure, something you can put your hands on, but really the key and where people are successful in robotics is selling a vision. Because most often a robot of any sort is going to be extremely disruptive. It's going to be changing the status quo. So that's really the key where you find someone who excels and someone who doesn't, is if they can sell a vision, not just a tangible item.
Sure. So, what does that look like, selling the vision of the robot?
Well, you're going to have to be tactful about it, right? You're going to figure out what exactly does my robot provide, and then you kind of work backwards. Okay, this is the outcome that it provides. Now, who are the people that actually work it, run it, touch it? Get to know that audience, and then you work backwards. What disease state am I really trying to either solve, manipulate, or fix? And then you go even deeper into like, what's the root cause of that problem that now I'm trying to help fix?
Got it. So when we're talking about your robot, what disease state is that covering?
So the one I'm selling is covering BPH, benign prostatic hyperplasia.
Okay. So let's talk about it. I want you to walk us back to when, did you launch this robot, or this robot has been a mainstay when you started selling it?
So I wouldn't say it's mainstay. I always joke with people. This robot in particular, I just consider it's in like that middle school kind of like the braces are on. We're about to be that beautiful swan type era.
I like it.
So
I
it
like
was
it.
already launched when I came on board, but it really hasn't even hit, the stride that it will eventually.
Okay, so let's and that's what I want to get at. So well, actually, before we even go to there, please let the audience know what type of providers are you working with on a regular basis?
So these are urologists.
Urologists, right? So how do urologists receive the robot? Are the majority of them excited about it, or are the majority of them reticent about
So with any disruptive technology, you're going to see like a bell curve of sorts. So you're going to have just certain people, the way that they are wired, they want to be first. They are excited about being first. They're excited about new technology. And then you're going to work into okay, like they're early innovators, but they kind of want someone else to go first. And then you work into okay, like there's some good data behind this. I feel safe, right? So there's a different level of buyers
it?
with
Sure.
any disruptive technology. So at this point in the market that I'm in, I would say we're probably still in the early adopter phase. So they still have to be those guys that get excited about something new, guys or girls that are excited about something new. They want and they maybe feel empowered by being, first to market. So I think we're in that realm still here in the Carolinas.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, you're in the robotic space. Is there a world where we don't even need the surgeons anymore or the urologists anymore? As far as this procedure is concerned, the robot will take care of it all.
I don't think so, because I think there's always going to be power in like the human conscious, right? And I probably am not smart enough to know if that could be replicated. But I think at this point, I think that's the secret sauce to anything is that human experience, that human element that's really going to put like the cherry on top of something.
Got it. All right. So, so many questions I want to ask. Now I want to understand how your team is set up, or even if you have a team, what is it like with your territory? Are you as a sales rep, what's your title?
So I am considered an ASR. I'm the one and only of the Carolinas, but I have counterparts. So what we like to call our first team first. So these are the people that are considered like our pod. So the RSRs, the robotic sales reps, their duties are to sell the actual physical robot.
Okay.
I obviously help in doing that. I'm very influential in doing that, but that's not my sole task.
Okay.
Once the robot is purchased by the hospital, then an ASR like myself, the whole point is to not only solidify that sale, but then grow that program to then agitate the other markets and be able to hit more patients.
Got it. Got it. Generally speaking, how easy or hard is this to do?
Robotics or like this specific position?
Your specific role as an ASR, being the person that's responsible for the growth of the utilization of that product.
I mean, I think for me, it's my natural inclination. So, I mean, I've done millions of harder things than this, right? But I think that's how certain salespeople are bred. You can't look at your duty as like, wow, this is hard. It should be exhilarating. It should be fun. It should be difficult at times, but then rewarding at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I think it's an amazingly fun job.
Wonderful. So what type of person, right now in our audience, there's a lot of people that are looking to get into the industry. And there's a lot of people that are currently in the industry that are looking to transition to a different industry. Let's talk about robotics. What are the top characteristics? Let's start with the positive ones that you would say a person specific for robotics would need to have.
Discipline, influence, and perseverance.
So talk to me a little bit more about the influence. What do you mean by that?
I hinted on it a little bit in the earlier part of the conversation, but you're selling something so much larger than a product that you really have to be able to influence someone's way of thinking. That the golden standard that they are currently using or their status quo currently is not sufficient, right? That takes not only some balls,
Mm-hmm.
but some eloquence.
Mm-hmm.
And then that influence piece is you got to be able to move people. And however, that person in front of you is going to respond, like you'll have to be tactful about that. But I think influence is huge in this market.
Got it. Got it. Okay. So walk us through a day in the life of an ASR robotics sales rep. Well, actually,
Day in the life.
yeah, walk us through it from the moment you wake up, what's
Yeah.
happening, and take all the way to when you get home at night.
Sure. Well, I think any salesperson probably can relate to this, but you're kind of, once you start dreaming about your day ahead, that's when you know you've really kind of lost it in a good way. But right when you wake up, it's really making sure for me that I've got my ducks in a row. Okay. So not only do I have my family sector that I need to make sure gets taken care of, but at the same time, kind of aligning my to-do list on calendar wise, making sure I talk to the people that I need to talk to. There's a piece here that I'd love to stick on for a second. There's an internal network that you need to create within any business. But you have to have time during your day that you're really fostering those relationships in your internal networks. And that's more about like self-development because you can kind of get lost in the tasks of your job, right? Okay, I need to go to this hospital by
Right.
8 a.m. I got to call this surgeon at 8:07 because that's the only time he said he could talk and he's got
Right.
5 minutes, to
Right.
do it. And then I've got a meeting at noon. I got to make sure I order that lunch that I didn't order last night. That's kind of like those tasks that you can get lost in,
Sure.
right? Like those are important, but what else are you doing to create meaningful connections? And a lot of that is an internal network that you have to foster, and you have to spend time doing that.
Makes perfect sense. How often are you talking to? Well, actually, so we'll continue walking us through the day.
Yeah. So morning, kind of making sure my calendar is aligned properly with what needs to get done. Looking at, okay, the next 2 weeks, what do I need to do today to make those things happen? Calling urology offices, hospitals, connecting with my first team first, my robotic sales rep counterparts. Hey, what do you need me doing? I'm in Raleigh today. Do you need me to go to certain X person's office to try to get him face to face? It's really a lot of hunting, right? And even if it's about program development, okay, I've got to meet with the CEO of the hospital today and present on what this robot has done for his um, kind of patient demographic. Yes, I have that to do, but that's stuff you've prepared for a week prior.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of it is not just those like daily things you have to get done. It's like looking far out and saying, what do I need to do today to make sure that
Right.
task in 2 weeks is successful?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, what times your days normally end?
Um, so people the people that know me well will get a chuckle out of this. I'm one of those like rogue late night email people. Because I don't know, when you have quiet time and you can, meditate on maybe situations or ideas,
Mhm.
a lot of creative juices start flowing for me around that time. Now, I don't expect other people to respond also, but it's me kind of just getting it off of my
Right. Right.
chest.
No, I get it.
So I would say it ends probably around 5 o'clock when I pick up my kids. But then there's like this resurgence at around like 7:30 when all my creative juices are just going wild.
What a blessing to have that. I love it. Love it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that. So, how busy are robotic sales reps? A robotic, and I guess you can speak to the ASR and to the sales rep. In robotics, is it similar to? Can it be lumped in with things like trauma, or is it very, very elective, and it's more lumped in with things like, you know, some elective surgery that you really get to pick and choose? Where does the busyness of a robotics sales professional fall?
So for in our company Procept, an RSR, so that's my counterpart, he's gonna be or she's gonna be as busy as she makes or he makes themselves, right? Because you're solely hunting to sell a new robot. My role is a mixture of helping to sell that robot, then being the clinical support inside of the OR, and building the program so that more patients are included into this funnel. Now, this procedure in particular is extremely elective. It is 100% elective. So other robots, not so much. This one though is elective, so it's not like trauma where you get called, you're at dinner, and it's like, hey, I need you here in 2 hours. It's like, you know about these procedures for probably a few weeks in advance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Makes sense. What are the pitfalls that someone can have that's considering getting into robotics? But if they have these pitfalls, it's going to be difficult for them in the robotic space.
So I think if you're like an instant gratification person, that's going to be a pretty hurtful downfall. Yeah, that's gonna hurt a little bit. Because when you're selling something that's more visionary, just think of it as changing someone's mind that has been set for 50 years, right? Like that's pretty difficult. So it takes good time, perseverance. And if you're someone who's like, hey, I need that instant kind of like that feeling of a win. I came from the logistics industry before, and that was a pretty difficult learning curve for me of like, oh, you don't get that like feeling of like, I just like sold something and I sold that thing like I've never sold it before. It's like a very slow burn, and you get to see the benefits of it. But I think that could really discourage someone if they're not given that expectation up front.
Okay. What else?
So I don't know if this is a pitfall per se, but you've got to be authentic. So if you've got like a way about you that make people feel squirmy, there is no place for that inside of an operating room and like a medical office, like where there's patients. Like you cannot, that'll be a big downfall. You've got to really, when you walk into that space, whatever that space is, there's got to be no rattle in your cage. You've got to be super authentic.
Got it. In robotics, what is the salary range?
Salary wise, I would say you can get anywhere between maybe 80,000 a year to maybe like 150. But like most sales jobs and any sales job that I would want, the predominant money you're going to make is in commission.
And what do the commissions look like?
So yeah, I would expect that to be double. So whatever your salary is, you want to at least double in commission.
Nice. So someone that is at a base salary of 150, they should be earning commissions of around 300 to give them.
That should be their goal. That should absolutely be their goal.
And robotics is where you can absolutely make that happen.
Most certainly.
Now, is that also from the position of an ASR, or is that only as an RSR?
No, an RSR, man, those boys and girls better be making more than that. They're selling like $1 million robot. You better be making them big bucks. No, so if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing on that robotic, so in ProCep world, we're gonna call them RSRs, you should be making more than double that salary. Now, in ASR, it's different, right? Because you're not selling that tangible piece. It's like a one-time hit. This is a program that you're building. So you may see a little bit less than your RSR counterpart, but I would argue there's way more longevity on that side.
So that's funny, because I'm when you first described ASRs and RSRs, I'm assuming ASR is what you do to become an RSR, but the way you just described it now with more longevity as an ASR, it just sounds like two different career tracks completely.
It totally is. And you'll notice, I mean, I'm sure the hiring people kind of can tell what personalities fit into each bucket. I would like to consider myself more of a unicorn. Like I have a very extreme hunter mentality. So that's why I actually pair really well with my RSRs. I can get a lot done with them. But I'm also the chameleon that can fit into the OR, soften things up. I have the clinical acumen. I have the background to do that. But yeah, it's completely separate career paths, and one's not better than the other. It's very different skill sets.
Got it. Now, because you're selling a robot, and maybe even think about your customers that maybe not excited about the robot, but can definitely see the value and the benefit. How are you typically appreciated by accounts? Is it, oh, hey, it's Ellis, dude, you better send her back? Or is it more like, oh, Ellis is back, okay, let's see if we have time? Or are you fighting to even get time? What's the scenario?
Yeah. So in my role, right, the procedure is already, on the books in the OR. So I am not only wanted to come in, but I'm needed for the procedure to even work. So they most certainly look at you like, no, we need you in here. Like, come on in. Now it's a different conversation if you're asking me like, is the vibe in a hospital like pleasant and upbeat? Most likely not.
What do you mean?
But well, that's a whole other combo. But as someone they look to for, some value, you're definitely valued. And I think that's a fair statement in all the robotic industries.
Got it. So now I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to kind of dig deep. Tell us about a situation where you were in a procedure and you thought to yourself, wow, this is what I get to do. And if that's never happened, you can say that too. But if it has, please share.
Yeah, so it's happened a few times actually, and at multiple companies. So one of the ones that's really sticks into my mind is when I was working for Boston Scientific, and we were doing what they call an ERCP, which is probably their most complex procedure that a gastroenterologist is going to perform. And this was a woman, she was like 30 something years old, she was pregnant, and she had these stones in her biliary ducts. Now, for anyone who doesn't know what that is, it's totally fine, but it ain't good. So you got to get those out. And it can be pretty fatal, like if you don't, right? So I remember being in there, and not a lot of times do you feel that pressure in certain situations, because again, that's a personality trait, I think, of reps that are in the OR, is you don't get rattled easily. But just having that feeling afterwards and it was successful, it's like, this is what people talk about, like, I did something today that literally changed someone's life. It's pretty effing cool.
Yeah, it's pretty profound. That's a lovely thing.
Yeah. But I have also another story that I'd love to share. In GI, I stood at the wrong end of the bed on my first colon stent case, and I was browned out. That was
serious?
also a moment where I was like, this is my job. I need to figure out a better place to stand in this room.
When that happened, did the office just kind of give you that look like you shouldn't have been standing there? Or was it, or what?
Well, so I'm in the South, right? So there was like one nurse in particular who she was like, oh, bless your heart. Like, you should have known better. Yeah. And then everyone else was like, oh my gosh, like oh my God, are you okay? I mean, it was pretty, obviously it still sticks with me to this day. So it has imprinted on me.
That is hilarious. So you mentioned your family earlier. We're going to switch gears a little bit. How many kids do you have?
I've got 2 and I'm expecting my 3rd.
Ooh, how old are the 2?
4. The little one will be 2 in November. And then, so they'll all be like 2 years apart.
Oh, you're in the trenches. You're
oh raising, yeah, man. We're in the fun
right
stuff. We're in the fun stuff. So you remember when I said, yeah, my job isn't like that hard compared to like other things? Yeah, that's why.
That's the other thing. Yeah. So I guess what I want to say is, being a mom of 3, and having this dynamic position that you can earn a lot in, and really change patients' lives. Is it relatively easy to manage, or do you find it one of your challenging things you're always trying to figure out?
So that's a really great question. Number one, most things that you'll find in life are totally based on your expectations, right? And your past experiences and how you pull from those past experiences. So have I been in situations in prior positions, prior life environments that are more difficult than my scheduling conflicts that I have right at work? 100%. But you have to look at it that way, right? I think more of the issue is an identity friction that happens for females who, I mean, I know I experienced this profoundly. So much of my identity was wrapped up in the perception of success in my career.
Mhm.
And then when you have a kid, your priorities have to completely change, in my opinion. That's just my personal opinion.
Mhm.
And you're made better for it. But that friction of your identity kind of morphing, that can be pretty soul rocking.
Mhm. How did you get through that?
I think so. There's this really cool quote Will Smith says that when your priorities are clear, decisions become easy. So once I was able to admit, okay, God is one, husband is number two, family is three, career is four, all the decisions after that become super easy.
I like it. I like it. Man, who would have thought you'd be quoting Will Smith today?
Listen, I got layers.
That is awesome. I love it. I love it. Um, I guess what I want to ask now is, robotics, getting to robotics. So you've had a career where you've experienced different roles that ultimately got you here to robotics. Is
Yeah.
is robotics a green friendly field, or are most people that enter robotics coming from a seasoned years of experience in medical
Yeah.
science?
So I think it's dependent on the company, where the company is at their maturity level. So currently at Procept, it is absolutely a thing for someone to be green, right? There's associate roles, there's roles that allow you to grow into kind of that career trajectory. But let's say you're with Procept 2.5 years ago, I would argue not, right? Like the maturity level of that company in particular just isn't there to be able to protect and really cultivate a culture where someone could grow.
But now Procept is that.
Totally, absolutely.
That is awesome. So it's a very green friendly field. So
Yeah.
basically, in robotics, it's green friendly. You can pretty much command your own time. You make great money. You're changing patients' lives, and it's fun. Is this am I on the right track?
Well, listen, it's not for everybody. Now, don't get it twisted here. Um, it's demanding in a lot of this is internal work. It's demanding on your own willingness to stand firm in conviction of your product, stand firm in the vision that the company has, right? So that's not for the faint of heart. That's most certainly true. But I think when it comes to sales roles in general, the medical device realm is a great place to have that seesaw. Like I don't even say it's a work life balance because it'll never be that, but it's a seesaw. Like one day I'm going heavy on work, the next day I may be going heavy on fam,
Oh,
and it's just going to be this never ending like seesaw effect. But I think it can support people who are looking for that, like looking for a little bit of this and a little bit of that. But I mean, you've got to put your time in to be successful at it.
absolutely. Man, so many pearls of wisdom you dropped on us today, Ellis.
Oh man.
Okay. We're going to switch gears one more time, and we're going to do the lightning round. I'm going to ask you 4 questions, and you're going to have less than 10 seconds to answer. Are you ready?
Ready as I'll ever be.
Okay, before we jump to lightning round, is there anything else you want to share with our audience today?
Yeah, I would love to share just a little bit more about it doesn't have to be this really straight path. Like when I graduated college, I was the normal college grad. I switched, majors like an ungodly amount of times. I saw med device as kind of this pedestal job that I wanted to get into, but my path was so all over the place, like in between that to this. But really the key for me is people have to be able to not only identify life experiences that they've had that they can then utilize in the workspace, but you have to be able to eloquently like talk about them, because if you cannot express how your life experiences can connect to the business world, people aren't even going to ever be able to see your potential. So I want to make sure that's super clear, that even if you don't get into robotics right away and you take other jobs, start documenting, okay, that specific example or that sale that I was able to accomplish. How am I gonna, if med device is my end game, how am I going to talk about that and relate it so that in the med device interview process, I can create a connection there? So I think that's something people really need to get better at, is telling their own story.
Love it. I love it. And that's exactly what we do at Evolve Success. So I love the fact that you mentioned that. Okay, ready for the lightning round?
Here we go.
All right. First question. What is the best book you read in the last 6 months?
Ooh, 6 months. The Alchemist.
Ooh, that's a good one. That is
Yeah.
Good. All right. All right. Okay. Best movie or TV show you've seen in the last 6 months?
Well, I watch a lot of Disney movies.
Okay. Nothing wrong with
but
best one.
I just watched the Guardians of the Galaxy, the last one.
Okay. You liked it. It was good, huh?
Love me some Groot. Yeah, love me some Groot. So I'm all about that.
That's awesome. All right. Best meal you've had in the last 6 months. And if
Okay, so my husband was a chef for 15 years.
Oh, okay.
So that's like every night I get like some amazing meal. But he made the other night, it was a chicken breast that had cooked like Parmesan cheese on top, with like roasted tomatoes and spinach just like falling off the side. He had this like mango risotto with it. Yeah.
So can we get the recipe in terms? That's the real question.
Yeah.
All right. So
I think I got a business idea.
You heard it here first, folks. She said she's going to get the recipe. So we're going to hold
I'll get it.
And then the last question, what's the best experience you've had in the last 6 months?
Best experience. So this may hit home for all my parents out there, but seeing my kids do something difficult that they have verbalized that they cannot do, and stewarding them to them completing the task, and the look on their faces when they realize they can do hard things is one of the coolest experiences anyone can ever have.
Hey, it doesn't get better than that. Ellis, again, it was wonderful having you on the show. We can't wait to see all the wonderful things you do with your career. Thank you again for spending time on the show.
Thanks so much, Sam. It's been a pleasure.
And that was Ellis Hatchett. Fantastic stuff. So if any of you have heard this episode, you listened to the interview and you thought to yourself, I want to do what Ellis Hatchett is doing. Where do I go? How do I get there? Show me the way. Then I encourage you to visit evolveyoursuccess.com. There you're going to learn how you can become exactly what Ellis is. And you're going to go to the website, you're going to fill out an application, you're going to give us your information, and you're going to schedule a time with one of our account executives and have a conversation that can literally change your life. You know, that's how we see it here at Evolve Your Success. We are literally in the business of changing lives, and we happen to be doing it through the opportunities within medical sales careers. And if you're listening to this podcast, then I know you're either someone that's in it or someone that wants to be. And there should be no reason you're someone that just wants to be when there's a resource like this out there. As always, we do our best to bring you guests that are doing things different in the medical sales space. So make sure you tune in next week for another episode of the Medical Sales Podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And remember, I have a couple programs that show you exactly how to break into the medical sales industry, become a top-performing medical sales professional, and also how to masterfully navigate your career to executive level leadership. Check out these programs and learn more at evolveyoursuccess.com. Stay tuned for more awesome content with amazing interviews.